Most people think in patterns they inherited. From parents, from culture, from education systems designed to produce compliance. They mistake these inherited patterns for their own thoughts. They believe they're thinking when they're really just running software installed by others. Then there's the Sigma male, processing reality through a completely different operating system. Not better, not superior, just fundamentally, structurally, impossibly different. Watch someone make a decision. Any decision. Notice how they look around first. Notice how they calculate social acceptability. Notice how they weigh what others will think before they consider what they actually want. This is normal thinking. This is how 99% of humans navigate reality. The Sigma male's first question isn't what will people think. It's what is actually true. And that single difference in the first question creates a completely different architecture of thought. Let me take you into the mechanics of conventional thinking. Most people operate on validation loops. They have a thought, they test it against social consensus, they adjust based on feedback. Thought, validation, adjustment. Thought, validation, adjustment. It's a closed system where external reality acts as the regulator. The hive mind keeps individual thinking within acceptable parameters. This isn't weakness. This is how humans survived as a species. Conformity creates cohesion. Cohesion creates collective power. But it also creates collective blindness. The Sigma male's thinking doesn't run through validation loops. He has a thought, he tests it against his own logic and values, he keeps or discards it based on internal coherence. Thought, internal verification, integration, or rejection. The external world provides information, but not authority. This creates a fundamentally different relationship with reality. Most people ask, what should I think? The Sigma asks, what do I actually observe? The first is social. The second is empirical. And empiricism without social filtering leads to conclusions that seem alien to those still running consensus-based thinking. Here's where it gets deeper. Most people think in narratives they've been taught. The good life looks like this. Success means that. Happiness requires these things. These narratives are cultural software running on human hardware. They're not examined. They're not questioned. They're inherited and executed. The Sigma male doesn't reject these narratives out of rebellion. He examines them, finds them insufficient or inaccurate, and constructs his own frameworks. This makes him seem weird, antisocial, or arrogant. But he's not being contrarian. He's being empirical. He tested the common narratives against his lived experience, and they failed quality control. Let me show you how this plays out in practical cognition. When most people encounter a problem, they think, what do people normally do in this situation? They pattern match to social solutions. The Sigma male encounters the same problem and thinks, what are the actual variables here? He deconstructs the problem into components, analyzes relationships between components, and constructs solutions from first principles. This is why his solutions often seem strange. They're not socially derived. They're logically derived. And logic doesn't care about tradition or consensus. This first principles thinking creates isolation, but also accuracy. Most people are thinking collectively, which means they're all making the same errors collectively. The Sigma is thinking independently, which means his errors are his own, but so are his insights. When the crowd is wrong, he's right. When the crowd is right, he arrived at the same conclusion through different reasoning. He's never just going along. He's always verifying. And constant verification is exhausting, which is why most people don't do it. They trust the crowd. The Sigma doesn't trust the crowd. He doesn't distrust it either. He simply treats it as data rather than authority. Now let's talk about time horizons, because this is where Sigma thinking diverges most dramatically from normal cognition. Most people think in immediate or near-term consequences. What will happen today, this week, this month? They optimize for short-term comfort and short-term social approval. The Sigma male thinks in systems and trajectories. He's asking, if I make this choice consistently for 5 years, where does it lead? If this pattern continues, what's the inevitable outcome? He's running simulations in his head that most people never run because they're too focused on immediate feedback. This long-term thinking makes him seem cold or disconnected. He'll reject immediate pleasure that compromises long-term goals. He'll endure immediate social disapproval to maintain trajectory toward distant objectives. He's playing a different game on a different timeline. Most people are playing checkers, thinking 1 or 2 moves ahead. He's playing chess, thinking 10 moves ahead. But it's not even chess, because chess has agreed upon rules. He's inventing his own game with his own victory conditions, then playing it with a 20-year time horizon while everyone else is optimizing for tonight. Here's the cognitive pattern that defines Sigma thinking more than anything else: comfort with uncertainty. Most people need answers. They need to know what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. They need categories and labels and clear distinctions. Uncertainty creates anxiety, so they rush to conclusions that eliminate uncertainty even if those conclusions are wrong. The Sigma male has developed a completely different relationship with not knowing. He can hold questions open indefinitely. He can live in the space between answers. He doesn't need closure. He needs accuracy. And accuracy often requires sitting with uncertainty until real clarity emerges. This comfort with uncertainty is why he seems indecisive to people who need quick answers. They see hesitation. He sees patience. They see doubt. He sees calibration. They want him to commit to a position. He's still gathering data. And he'll keep gathering data long after they've moved on, because his commitment is to truth, not to the social comfort that comes from having a position. This makes him unreliable as a team player, but reliable as an independent thinker. He won't tell you what you want to hear. He'll tell you what the evidence suggests after he's examined it from every angle. Let me take you into the metacognitive layer. Most people don't think about their thinking. They just think. The thoughts arise, they believe them, they act on them. There's no gap between thought and identity. Their thoughts are them. The Sigma male has developed metacognition. He watches his own thinking. He notices when emotions are distorting logic. He catches himself pattern matching when he should be analyzing. He sees his own biases operating and compensates for them. This creates a split. He's both the thinker and the observer of thinking. And this observer position allows him to edit, refine, and upgrade his cognitive processes in real time. This metacognitive awareness is why he can change his mind without ego damage. Most people's egos are attached to their positions. Changing position feels like admitting defeat. The Sigma's ego is attached to accuracy, not positions. Changing positions when new evidence appears is victory, not defeat. He's won by getting closer to truth. This cognitive flexibility makes him seem inconsistent to people tracking his positions over time. But he's not inconsistent. He's adaptive. His commitment to truth is consistent. His conclusions are provisional and update as information updates. Now, here's the cognitive pattern that most people find most disturbing. Inverse thinking. Most people think forwards. If I do X, Y will happen. The Sigma also thinks backwards. If I want Y to happen, what X is required? But more importantly, he thinks in negatives. Instead of asking what he should do, he asks what he should not do. Instead of pursuing success, he eliminates failure modes. Instead of seeking what to add to his life, he identifies what to remove. This via negativa approach to thinking produces radically different results than positive thinking because it's based on subtraction rather than addition. Most people are trying to do more, be more, have more. They're adding complexity. The Sigma is subtracting everything that doesn't serve his core purpose. He's removing obligations, simplifying systems, eliminating distractions. His thinking is reductive rather than expansive. This makes his life look empty to people whose lives are full of things they don't actually value. But emptiness is space. And space is where clarity lives. His mind isn't cluttered with shoulds and supposed tos. It's clear. And that clarity allows for depth of thought that cluttered minds can't access. Let's talk about how Sigma males process social information, because this is where the thinking difference becomes most visible. Most people process social situations emotionally first, logically second. They feel their way through interactions, reading subtext, managing impressions, navigating social dynamics. The Sigma male processes social situations logically first, emotionally second. He's analyzing patterns, identifying motivations, predicting behaviors. He sees social interactions as systems with inputs and outputs rather than as emotional experiences to be navigated with feeling. This doesn't mean he lacks emotional intelligence. It means his emotional intelligence is conscious rather than automatic. Most people's emotional processing happens below awareness. They just feel things and react. The Sigma's emotional processing is deliberate. He notices the emotion, identifies its source, evaluates whether it's providing useful information or just noise, then decides whether to act on it. This creates a lag that people misinterpret as coldness. They expect immediate emotional reciprocity. He's processing whether the emotional response is warranted. By the time he responds, they've decided he doesn't feel. But he feels deeply. He just doesn't let feelings override analysis. Here's the cognitive framework that separates Sigma thinking most clearly. Principle-based rather than rule-based thinking. Most people follow rules. Society says, do this, don't do that. They obey or disobey, but either way, they're responding to external rules. The Sigma male operates on principles, internal frameworks he's constructed that guide behavior. When rules align with his principles, he follows them. When they don't, he ignores them. This isn't lawlessness. It's ethical independence. He's taking responsibility for his own moral reasoning rather than outsourcing it to authority. This principle-based thinking makes him seem arrogant. How dare he decide for himself what's right and wrong when society has already decided? But he's not deciding arbitrarily. He's applying reason to ethics. He's asking, what principles would create the world I want to live in? Then he embodies those principles regardless of whether others share them. Most people's ethics are tribal. What's right is what my group says is right. The Sigma's ethics are rational. What's right is what survives logical scrutiny when examined from multiple perspectives. Let me show you how this thinking difference affects decision-making at the deepest level. Most people make decisions to avoid regret. They choose paths that minimize potential for future self-blame. This regret minimization strategy leads to safe, conventional choices, because conventional choices are easier to justify if they fail. Everyone else made the same choice, so how could I have known better? The Sigma male makes decisions to maximize learning. He chooses paths that will generate the most information, even if they're riskier. Failure is just expensive feedback. He's not avoiding regret. He's pursuing data. This learning maximization versus regret minimization creates completely different life trajectories. Most people end up with predictable lives they can defend. The Sigma ends up with unpredictable lives he understands. Most people can explain their choices to others. The Sigma can explain his choices to himself. Most people die having lived the life they were supposed to live. The Sigma dies having lived the life that made sense, given what he learned along the way. Now here's the cognitive pattern that's hardest for normal thinkers to grasp. Non-attachment to outcomes. Most people think in terms of goals. They want X to happen. They plan for X. They work toward X. Their identity becomes tied to achieving X. The Sigma male thinks in terms of systems and processes. He sets direction rather than destination. He builds habits rather than pursuing outcomes. He knows that outcomes are influenced by too many variables outside his control, but processes are entirely within his control. So he perfects the process and lets outcomes emerge. This process orientation makes him seem aimless to goal-oriented people. Where are you going? What do you want? He doesn't have a simple answer because he's not going anywhere specific. He's building capacity, developing skills, following curiosity. The destination will reveal itself as the journey unfolds. This requires comfort with emergence that most people don't have. They need to know where they're going before they start. He starts before he knows where he's going, because the journey itself provides the navigation data. Let's go deeper into abstraction, because this is where Sigma thinking becomes almost alien. Most people think in concrete terms. Jobs, relationships, possessions, status. Things that can be seen and measured. The Sigma male thinks in abstractions. Systems, patterns, principles, dynamics. Things that can only be understood through sustained analysis. He sees the world as nested systems interacting in complex ways. Most people see the world as objects and events. This abstraction versus concrete difference means they're literally seeing different realities when they look at the same situation. When most people look at a successful person, they see the success. The Sigma sees the system that produced the success. When most people look at a failed relationship, they see the failure. The Sigma sees the incompatible operating systems that made failure inevitable. When most people look at society, they see people and institutions. The Sigma sees feedback loops, incentive structures, and emergent behaviors. He's living in a different dimensional space. They're on the ground floor. He's looking at the architectural blueprints. This abstract thinking creates communication problems. He tries to explain what he sees. They hear jargon and theory. He's describing invisible systems. They want to discuss visible things. He's talking about underlying patterns. They want to talk about surface events. Neither is wrong. They're just operating at different levels of analysis. But because most people operate at the concrete level, he's the one who seems to be overcomplicating things. He's not overcomplicating. He's seeing the actual complexity that simple thinking obscures. Here's the final cognitive pattern that defines Sigma thinking. Integration over accumulation. Most people accumulate. They gather information, experiences, relationships, possessions. More is better. Their minds are databases of disconnected facts. The Sigma male integrates. He takes information and integrates it into frameworks. He takes experiences and extracts principles. He takes relationships and learns patterns. He's not collecting. He's synthesizing. His mind is a coherent system where everything connects to everything else. This integration creates depth that accumulation never achieves. Most people know a lot but understand little. The Sigma knows less but understands deeply. Most people can tell you what happened. The Sigma can tell you why it happened and what will happen next. Most people are wide and shallow. The Sigma is narrow and deep. And depth, true structural understanding of how things actually work. That's what allows for original thinking. You can't think new thoughts with borrowed frameworks. You can only think new thoughts with integrated understanding. So when you ask how Sigma males think differently, the answer isn't one thing. It's an entire cognitive architecture built on different foundations. They think empirically rather than socially. They think long-term rather than immediate. They think systemically rather than concretely. They think in principles rather than rules. They think process rather than outcome. They think integration rather than accumulation. And each of these differences compounds with the others to create a way of processing reality that's so foreign to normal thinking that communication becomes almost impossible. The Sigma male isn't smarter than everyone else. He's just playing a different game with his cognitive resources. Most people use their intelligence to navigate social reality successfully. He uses his intelligence to understand actual reality accurately. Most people think to fit in. He thinks to figure out. Most people's thinking serves their social survival. His thinking serves his comprehension. And comprehension, without concern for social approval, creates thoughts that sound crazy until they're proven right. This is how Sigma males think differently from everyone else. Not as a performance, not as a strategy, but as a fundamental orientation toward truth over comfort, accuracy over acceptance, understanding over belonging. It's a lonely way to think, but it's an honest way to think. And in a world drowning in comfortable lies, honest thinking is the rarest resource available.